Alright, I think it's time to look at some Discord messages. Okay, this is not kind of weird. This is super fucking mainstream and conventional. This is what everyone is told to believe. This is like literally the status quo. It's what the authorities are telling people to believe. It's not weird. Oh, maybe he meant it's weird that there's a contrast. See, this sentence stands on its own and says, I'm weird because, and it gives a reason. I think what he might have meant is I'm weird because on the one hand X and on the other hand Y. If he split that into a separate sentence with this but, that's a bit unclear. But if he means, okay, so he's completely normal in healthcare but then not normal in universities, I think that's what he meant. So it's like weird because he is normal in one thing and not a different thing. That makes more sense. But he doesn't know much about it anyways. Okay, so Justin then talks about it. And so I already talked to him about healthcare this morning. I just hadn't read all this chat. I just started saying something. Well, specifically, I talked about demand for healthcare is elastic. That was basically the topic. And he found it productive and stuff, so that was good. Anyways, I've never looked up certificate of need. What the fuck is that? You're literally not allowed to offer new healthcare stuff if you don't convince the government in advance that the public needs it. What the fuck? Oh, that totally reminds me though. Okay, so certificate of need, reading from there. Right, the food comparison is a good comparison. That's pretty typical. See, the food comparison is good because food is a like quote necessity and you would like die without food. So when people try to say, well, healthcare isn't like iPhones, you don't need an iPhone, you only want an iPhone. That's not a good rebuttal to when it comes to groceries. Wait times in general like don't make sense and aren't necessary because like to a limited extent wait times make sense because you can you have like a queue of people waiting for something and you can organize it. Like you can schedule things in advance because if everything's being scheduled like a month out, then you can like organize the schedule, whereas if you're doing everything like last minute, you're gonna lose some efficiency in a way. I mean, obviously waiting in line for a month is inefficient in a way, but like you can hack the doctor's schedule in a better way if you have like a month of notice on what he's going to be doing when. Anyways, there are certain reasons to have a limited amount of wait time for logistical purposes, rather than trying to do everything like the day of, which makes total sense, perfectly reasonable. However, longer wait times than that basically don't help anything. If you just permanently have extra people waiting in line, but the line is staying the same length, that means you're keeping up with demand. You're just behind by, say, 1 month of work, and then every month you're always 1 month behind. And that's completely stupid and pointless. You should just hire extra help or work longer hours or whatever, catch up on the 1 month you're behind, and then go back to what you were doing. And then the wait times will just be a month shorter forever. There's no benefit to increasing the wait times just by being behind on stuff. Like I understand if you're overwhelmed and you're getting further and further behind over time, so the wait times keep getting longer and longer. But if you're just permanently, 6 months behind or a year behind or something, there's no benefit to that. There's no reason to delay catching up until later. It's just doing harm. There's a lot of government stuff with wait times like that, and it's not typical in other areas. Right, the Obamacare people lied on purpose because they don't care about honesty or integrity. They care about their agenda of getting certain laws passed. They want power. They want certain government controls of healthcare. They just said whatever they thought would make that happen. I don't know why they admitted it later. But yeah, you got people, Jesus, they want you to die at 75, and they're involved in creating our government healthcare. He wants flu shots stopped for the elderly? What the fuck is wrong with him? Jesus, those are cheap and effective. Some people live to 95. He doesn't care about the last 20 years of their life. Jesus. With him in charge, I never would have gotten to have a conversation with Thomas Sowell because he would have been fucking dead. George Reisman as well. Reisman's like 82 or something. And I only talked to him for the first time like a couple years ago. Like 3 years ago or something. So he would have been over 75. when I first spoke with him. Laws was like 90 when I first spoke with him. 91, something like that. Well, hold on. That guy just said he wanted to get rid of flu shots for the elderly. So not everyone gets free flu shots. Jesus. Like fucking worse than that. And free band-aids? No, they're still gonna charge you money for band-aids at the drugstore. Like maybe if you go to the hospital and wait in line, you can get free band-aids for the cost of your time. But at the drugstore, you don't get free band-aids. So people are still gonna be buying band-aids. The idea of profiting off something bad is really fucking common. Both like as an argument, but also it comes up in everything. Like, is a maid profiting off of dirt and dust? The dirtier your house gets, the more you're gonna hire her and she'll get paid. Like, maids they like dirt and dust. They like, I don't know, broken windows that let more dust in from outside or whatever. Like, are we gonna have a bunch of nasty anti-maid rhetoric because of how they're profiting off of something negative? You can do that with other stuff. Like, haircutters are profiting off of my hair not growing in the way I want it to. I'd like it to just, stop growing at a certain length. Something like that. I don't know. But, it gets too long. Like, this bad thing happens to me. It's very unfortunate for me that my hair gets too long, because then the haircutters are going to profit off that. Like, what bastards just profiting off of my misery and misfortune that my hair, of its own accord, got out of line with my hair desires. Are food sellers profiting off of hunger? Is that, like, really cruel? If you sell a hammer, are you profiting off of people having inadequate, like, shelter and birdhouses and, like, hooks in their walls and things nailed together and so on? Are you profiting off their lack of those things? Maybe hammers should be free because everyone deserves to be able to build a doghouse or whatever. Or build a regular house. Hammers are useful for that, too. If you sell a hammer to a guy who doesn't have a regular house so he can build a log cabin in Alaska, are you profiting off his lack of shelter in fucking Alaska? Is that evil of you? Oh yeah, I agree. That's totally a thing that can and will happen with systems like what our government is trying to do. People go to the doctor, like, they way overuse it in some dumb ways when they don't have to pay for it. That definitely happens. And it makes it harder to do things like video chat appointments, because in a free market, the doctor would be like, okay, I'll do a video chat appointment with you, and it costs a lower amount, and you're like, cool, yeah, and it like saves the doctor time and effort, and it saves you travel, and it's good. Just like selling better products in general. But when the government's in charge of healthcare, maybe they're going to say, oh, well, you did a video chat appointment, so those aren't worth as much money, or they don't fulfill your quota or whatever. Like, you have to convince the government to pay you for doing video chats. The government might be concerned about lower quality of care. They might be like, well, a bunch of doctors are just going to do a bunch of video chats and the patients won't get good enough care, so we have to, like, regulate them and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the want to be a customer thing, I've talked about that before. And so have other people. Oh, that sucks. I did not know about that particular example about at-home eye exams. What the fuck? Oh, this is the Felix one. We can kill that as well. Don't need that anymore. What is this stuff? Liberalism? Sure, leave that. Yes. Morality is objective. Which means there are truths of the matter about it. For example, if you think particular actions will achieve particular goals, you could be correct or incorrect. Right, we could be wrong. I'm just saying we already have knowledge. Fallible knowledge. In a lot of cases, we're not starting from scratch. We already have an answer. That's all. How do we error correct? Well, you can look for internal contradictions. You can point out how a method will not achieve a goal, or like how a choice will not achieve the results the choice is intended to achieve. You can point out how two of your values are in conflict. You can point out the logical consequences of someone's entire set of values. And you can make up other criteria of criticism as well. You can invent them. You can just have any criteria of criticism and explain why it's a good criterion, why it's a good type of criticism. Like, you can invent new categories of criticism. We're not limited to the ones we already know about or something. There's no, like, fixed list. Inventing better types of criticism. is an ongoing process where we can take some of the old types of criticism we used to use and stop using them because now we have better ones that work better and accomplish the same purposes better. Women in cloth bags is wrong. Okay, well, this question is very hard to answer out of context. But, okay, so one of the important things, and this applies not just to morality, but to every subject, according to critical rationalism, is you cannot question everything at once. You can question, 10 of your ideas while in the context of not questioning 1,000 other ideas. And this doesn't make you stuck because you can question all of your ideas, just not all at the same time. But you can go through and question every single idea, just not all at once. There's no limit on how you can change, and you can end up rejecting and replacing every single idea you currently have, just not all at once. So what you need for this is some context. What are some things that you're not questioning right now? Some things you're accepting. So for example, if you value nonviolence, then that would give us some sort of starting place to analyze this. If we're not questioning nonviolence right now, we're just questioning the cloth bags, but we can take nonviolence as a premise. Then we can consider, what keeps women in cloth bags? Is it threat of violence? And start analyzing that. By cloth bags, I think he means burqas. I think we're talking about Muslim countries here. Or if not burqas, just like the headdresses, the headscarf things at least. Like the partial coverings. I'm not sure what the point of this is. This is just sort of like moral philosophy is hard and complicated. I think that's the main lesson here. And people are bad at having consistent views. He thinks stealing is wrong. He has not stated any exceptions to that or why there would be exceptions or qualifications. But he also does something that he regards as stealing. So he doesn't know how to put those things together or whatever. This has no real bearing on is morality objective or what are the foundations of morality or are there foundations of morality or whatever. It's just, he is confused about a high level issue. He doesn't know a lot about this particular aspect of morality, which is very typical. If you want to understand something like that, what you really should do is learn some principles, some of the key concepts that help with analysis. So this is dealing with property and theft. So you should learn about liberalism. Here we go. Like 5 steps back. So it's sort of like, what is property? But okay, this is fine. Stealing is taking something from someone without their permission. Now, one of the things you'll find out with this definition is it doesn't apply to ebooks very well, because when you copy an ebook, copying does not take it away from someone. The normal thing with stealing is you take something and then the person you took it from no longer has it. But with downloading ebooks or pirated music or TV or movies, it is not stealing in the normal sense because the original owner still has it. So it's something else at least. There's some difference between the standard conception of stealing and the thing being this other thing. The focus on the author is interesting. Authors often get 7% royalties or something. You're focusing on where 7% of the sale price would go instead of the other 90-some%. So I think they think that the author deserves most of the credit, as opposed to the publisher and the advertiser and whatever, who made the book well known and paid for editing and so on. Well, a paper book is a product. A digital book is a little bit different. In some sense it's a product, but there are relevant differences here. So this is not a great argument because it is focusing on the consequences. But it's not necessarily a bad thing if authors didn't get paid. I mean, I write lots of things without getting paid. But you can't say if something would result in authors not writing books, it's necessarily bad or stealing or something. And also the issue is not if everyone did it. The issue is if you did it as an individual. What other people do is out of your control, more or less. The issue should be have you violated someone's rights? Have you violated a contract? Have you used force against someone? Have you defrauded someone? Have you used violence, etc.? Right, so Popper, as the author, was not going to get paid. His estate would. I have no idea what the situation with his estate is. Well, no children doesn't mean no heirs. He has, I think there's some sort of estate or something. Well, it was done in the expectation that the work put in to make the ebook would bring in not only present sales, but future sales. I mean, a lot of the ebooks I think were made after it's already dead. And they did that work because they thought they had the right to sell it, which I think they do. But these are not getting into like core principles. They're not dealing with starting points of like what are the most important ideas for doing this kind of analysis. We know a lot about that. You can start your analysis anywhere, but there are certain things that end up being really important in many different analyses, which is one of the things I talk about in the essay, the squirrel essay. Is like, even if you start with this stupid premise about maximizing the number of squirrels in the universe, you very quickly end up with capitalism and liberalism, quickly in terms of analysis. It leads you to a lot of the same standard ideas, and you can replace the squirrels with something else, like pigs or paper clips, and you would again end up with capitalism, liberalism, freedom and peace, and reason. And so those things are particularly important in a very foundation-independent way. They have a lot of reach to different values. They're relevant for a very wide variety of values and goals. And so that they are particularly important for things to understand. And this discussion is not looking at those things. It's not working its way up from our best ideas. The other thing not being covered here so far at all is like, what is intellectual property? Why does it exist? Why does it matter? What's the difference between a patent, a copyright, and a trademark? Why are there those three different categories? Like, what is the purpose of them? What makes them legitimate? How do they tie into liberal principles of a rational, free, civilized society? Another key thing is who is being harmed, and is the harm demonstrable in court? If the answer is no one's clearly being harmed, and certainly no one could make a court case that they were being harmed, then it makes it a lot harder to claim that there's any force being used. If there's not force being used, then what's the problem? So if it's not hurting anyone, now the claim that it's hurting them is like, well, if you couldn't download it, then you would have bought it. But that is a counterfactual claim that's hard to establish. Like, would you really, maybe you just would have gone without it. So it's not very clear that it actually hurts them. Right, so the lack of scarcity is an important thing, which is totally different context than stealing of physical goods. Well, I don't think the total amount of piracy is more money than is in the world. That would not be my estimate of the volume of downloads. By the way, a separate issue, like fairly separate and kind of parochial, the major cause of downloading is that the paid version is inconvenient, and like they actually make it hard for you to give them your money. Often paid products provide a worse experience in some ways than torrents. For example, you can get whenever I buy books on Kindle, they come with DRM, which prevents me from reading my own book in Outread or Voice Dream Reader or in Spreeder. So then, or even from getting quotes out of the book in a convenient way, because when you copy paste shit, it gets fucked up if it's on multiple separate pages in the ebook. And it gets, they put like quote marks around it, and then they say like from Kindle, and they put like the attribution, and normally I just want the quote. I don't want all that extra junk, so it's a hassle. So in order to get Kindle books and use them, I have to buy the Kindle book and pay them, and then also I have to do piracy shit in order to remove the digital rights management, remove the copy protection, and then I have to convert the book into other formats using Calibre, because they don't sell me the book in the formats that I want, because the main formats I use are EPUB and RTF, or TXT is okay. Because I use RTF or TXT for copy pasting quotes in general and for some searches. And so they don't actually sell me the book in the format I want. They make me do extra work of software processing. It's a hassle. Sometimes I have to update my piracy shit because they keep like updating their anti-piracy shit. I run like an old version of Kindle. Like, seriously, look, I have kindleold.app because they kept auto fucking updating and then it would break. So I had to like get the old one and then rename it so that the updater would just update the new one, which I also have. So now I have 2 Kindle apps on my Mac, and I don't even read Kindle books on Mac ever. If I was going to read a book in the Kindle app, I'd read it on my iPhone or iPad, preferably iPad in general. But if I was going to do that, I'd rather use iBooks, not Kindle, which I do use sometimes. I like iBooks better than Kindle. I think it's a better app. Wait, this is Kindle for Mac 4? Oh no, this is version 1.12.4. This is Kindle for Mac 4. That's weird. Last updated in February. See, this is an old version. Anyway, so that shit's a hassle. I certainly don't feel bad about removing the copy protection from the book and then converting it to other formats so I can put it in VoiceStream Reader or whatever. Because like I think that I've like bought, you know, the right to use it for personal use. I don't know what the contract actually says, but that's my opinion. I should be able to use it for personal use. I don't then upload it to a torrent site. I think it's very country based. Like, if it's in China, maybe there's a lot more piracy than in the US. But speaking of like convenience and like packaging stuff in a good way, like Steam has reduced piracy significantly in their industry by providing a good product and a good experience. Like, people actually like buying shit on Steam. They find Steam convenient. There's achievement systems. The shit, like, Steam deals with installers in a good way and updates things, and stuff actually works in general. So people like that, and they're a lot more willing to buy stuff when it's actually convenient and nice. Whereas, like, I find Kindle pretty inconvenient. But I think a lot of people find Kindle adequately convenient. But let's see this. One of my ideas about how to frame discussions One of my ideas about how to deal with discussions, especially with hostile people, is more framing. E.g., asking about like the purpose of the messages rather than responding to all the messages. People tend to dislike that though, and they don't want to talk about the purpose. They just want to jump into the messages, but then we're not on the same page about what our discussion goals are, and then because we're not on the same page about our goals and our interaction with each other, we have friction. But what they want to do is just like assume some sort of default goals, assume compatibility, and if it doesn't work, say you're bad at discussing and talk to someone else. So they can't deal with unconventionality. Also, internet, I think part of what you do is you switch games when it gets hard or more serious or whatever. Like, I think that's a thing that happens on purpose. That's really common. Like in Vindictus, once you started getting to the endgame bosses that were harder, then you stopped playing instead of learning how to beat them very much. That might be related to Archero. Maybe you were starting to find it hard and that's why you switched games. I don't know. But I bet that happens a lot. Most people do that. That's sort of how people learn philosophy and then fail also. Is they like learn it as long as it's easy and they're making progress easily. And then when they get to a hard part, that's when they quit. So for a while, they're like, this is going great, I'm learning a lot, I'm never going to quit, it's wonderful, blah, blah, blah. Which is the same thing people say about games they're playing. And then they get to a hard part and they get stuck for a while, and then they're like, never mind, screw this. And then they go do something else where they get off to a good start for a while. Well, the thing to do about it, like the main thing, is to figure out some game where you can get past it and get good at the game. You know, pick one and get good at it. Like, pick one where that'll actually work. Mario Odyssey has like a bunch of advantages for that. Like reasons it would work better than your typical game. But there are a lot of games where it'd be possible. But like, you also have not played Overwatch consistently to the point of actually getting all that good. Like, you stop around like low masters whenever you play, at best. Where as opposed to like never putting in the work to get to GM. Right, and when you did that, you made progress. Like, you got to low masters instead of like diamond. You're actually better at some stuff. It's like doable, you just have to do it. At something. Like, you can chill in part of your life, but you should have part of your life where you're like trying to accomplish things or whatever in life.